My name's Neil Balthaser and I'm your host at Ultramobility, the channel all about Class B camper vans. If you're interested in Class B camper vans or are looking to buy, this is the channel for you. If you haven't done so already, I ask you to please consider subscribing. It's super easy. Just click the subscribe button and it'll help me continue to make great videos. So last week we had my first ever live question and answer live stream here on YouTube. And there were actually quite a few questions about Pleasureway for Pleasureway. I had just gotten off a conversation with Dean Rumpel, the CEO of Pleasureway, and I'd shared some things that I had learned from him. And that sparked a lot of questions. So I thought today what I would do is I'd follow up. I got some answers back actually from Dean to those questions, so I wanted to share those answers with you today. Now, for the record, unlike other channels out there, RV lifestyle channels and others, I am not sponsored by Pleasureway. I'm not sponsored by anyone. So I think that's important to state up front. I like Pleasureway. I've spent my hard-earned cash purchasing a Pleasureway, and I can attest to its build quality, but I'm in no way sponsored by them. So I think it's important when people go out there on YouTube and they watch videos on other channels. I think it's important, and we should demand of these other YouTube channels, that if they are sponsored, especially by a coach builder, they should state up front that they're sponsored by that coach manufacturer. I just think it's important for people to know when they're taking in information from someone, where that information may be coming from, or if it may be influenced by a coach builder. So without further ado, let's take a look at some of these questions. One of the questions that we got was around an induction cooktop, and would we ever be seeing an induction cooktop from Pleasureway? I think this relates to the fact that a lot of people like to and want to try to get away from propane and propane usage, and of course the burners on many of these stoves use propane. So Dean was very nice in my conversation with him, and he said, look, it's not that they're against propane at all, and they've actually looked at the single burner induction cooktop. So again, it's something that's on their radar. And they do admit that induction cooking is, it'll heat up about 40% faster than propane, and it doesn't leave any residual heat around where you burn yourself. So those are the pros. But the cons with them are, one, most of the vans that you look at today with an induction cooktop, there's only one burner versus two that are available. That may or may not be something that bothers you. On a gas cooktop, you can get two burners, and on an induction, there's usually only one. And the other con, and it's a big one, is just simply the amount of energy usage. So an induction cooktop can take as much as 1,800 watts, pull 1,800 watts through the inverter system. Now on this Pleasureway, for instance, we have a 2,000 watt pure sine wave inverter. It's located right underneath that ottoman cushion over there. So if the induction cooktop's pulling 1,800 watts, you really don't have a lot of room to power anything else. Some vans, for instance, that we looked at this week earlier, I reviewed the Winnebago Era 70A, and it only has a 1,000 watt inverter, so it wouldn't even be able to power an induction cooktop. So that's something that people need to keep in mind, is induction cooktops take a lot of power. The second thing is, Dean said that they actually polled their customers through Facebook and asked them, would they rather have a double propane burner or a single induction cooktop? And based on that poll, at least, the majority of the respondents said that they would prefer to have the double propane burner. So that's why they decided to stay with the propane stove for now. I think that means to say that the jury is never closed on this issue, but at that point in polling, that's what the Pleasureway buyers wanted. Maybe in the future they'll poll them again and things will change. Not only that, I just want to point out and say, because I've considered this myself for my van, but anyone that goes onto Amazon or Walmart.com, you can find induction cooktops for $100, less than $100. They're really small. You can slide them in underneath the sink or something like that. And so if you really want to get an induction cooktop, you can have the best of both worlds. You can buy one of those, you can use it both inside and outside of your van, and still have your double burner as well. So that's the answer that I got back from Dean at Pleasureway about induction cooktops. The second question was around compressor refrigerators, not surprising as well. Three-way absorption refrigerators also use propane. I think these are related, these questions are related. And this is the exact quote from Dean. Dean said, quote, "Never say never, but," he says, "the three-way is tried and true, and it's designed for RV usage and bouncing down the road." So I think what Dean is really saying here is that there are some brands being used of compressor refrigerators out there that have been designed and are more meant for bar type refrigerators more than they are for RVs, and we need to be aware of those. And they're not necessarily designed to take the wear and tear, for instance, bouncing down the road from a longevity standpoint. You can look and you can find three-way absorption refrigerators that are still chugging along, and it's been, hundreds of thousands of miles and years that they've been used in that RV. So that's another plus of absorption refrigerators, is that they are quite simple and they have been designed for RV usage. The other thing that I do want to point out, and I try to point these out in my videos, is when you look at the aisle width in the kitchen, keep in mind in most of our vans, the kitchen's right in the middle of the van, so it's kind of a choke point. And compressor refrigerators, if you actually pull them out from their installment from the wall, you'll actually find that they're deeper than absorption refrigerators. And so they tend to stick out an inch or two more into the aisleway. And that's just something to be aware of, because as we know, we don't want to have such a constrained aisle in our vans that we have to do what I call the galley shuffle, which is only one person can be there at a time, and if someone wants to pass through, or if someone's coming out of the bathroom, something like that, then the other person has to move out of the way. So it may not seem a lot, but in our vans, 1 or 2 inches can be quite a bit, and they can mean the difference between doing the galley shuffle and not doing the galley shuffle. All right, the next question was around the 48-volt system, in particular the Volta system that Winnebago has announced that they're going to be coming out with. So Dean wanted me to preface this by saying that Pleasureway is in no way against the idea of large battery banks and all-electric vans. They're not against that. Dean and Pleasureway just feel that we're not quite there yet in terms of making the jump. What do you do with these are complex systems, like the Volta system and the E-Trek system from Road Trek. These are complex systems, electrical systems. And so what do we do when we have a problem with one of those systems? Where do we go and where do we take them in to be repaired? You're not just going to necessarily take them into the dealer. Most RV dealers have I've talked about this as well, they have a massive backlog in their service department as retail sales outpace the capacity of their service departments. So then when you add into that mix the fact that we're putting a very complex electrical system in that they're going to have to study up on, they're going to have to learn, and they're going to have to understand how to troubleshoot and repair, I'm not sure that the service infrastructure is there yet. And so it's not just a matter of putting and plopping big battery banks and big inverters and 48-volt, control systems into our vans. You have to think, I think, as a buyer, all the way through the equation, and what does it look like at the end when you do have a problem and you need to take it into the service department? I think that's a valid question, and I've experienced this myself going to a dealer that is backlogged where I had to book 3 months out in advance for simple fixes, very simple fixes, nothing to do with my electrical system. So we're not, I tend to agree with Dean that we're not there yet in terms of the entire infrastructure and everything being in place in order to support things like that. So that was a good answer that he gave me. Also, keep in mind that at least as I understand it from doing some research and talking with folks, I believe there's going to be something like a $30,000 MSRP increase for something like the Volta system. And that's a lot of money, if you think about it, for having that much energy in your battery banks, mainly to run your rooftop air conditioner. Because let's face it, the real big compelling reason to have a 48-volt system with that much battery capacity is because you're going to be consuming a huge amount of energy. And why are you going to be consuming a huge amount of energy? Because of that thing up there. That's the single largest power consuming component in any camper van. So you got to kind of think about that and say, you know, do I really want to pay $30,000 in order to run my AC unit off of battery power? Honestly, I think that's what the argument comes down to, because if you're not really going to be using your rooftop air conditioner all the time where it needs to run off battery, then you can easily self-sustain off of a 12-volt system like we have in this van and in many other vans for many, many days off, like I have here, 2 to 3 solar panels. And I've talked about that as well in another video. So if you'd like to go watch that video about power consumption, please take a look at it. Okay, the next question is, what about a family camper van from Pleasureway? And Dean likes the idea of a family camper van. He says they're certainly looking into it, but he also points out that beginning in model year 2019, they are shipping with the inflatable bed for the front seats, which allows you now to sleep an extra person. So in some cases, you can already consider the Pleasureway lineup family friendly. And I tend to agree with that. The next question is, when will the 2019 model year be available? And Dean says the 2019 coach model year will start to ship early July to dealers, so just around the corner. Another question was, when will the 2019 Mercedes Sprinter chassis be used? And Dean says that is the million-dollar question. There has been no formal announcement yet as to when the new plant in South Carolina will open, and they hope it's this September. That he says he has yet to see a plant open up on time. He says if that's the case, that they are hoping to receive a van chassis in January of 2019. Now keep in mind, that's when Pleasureway receives it, so they're going to have to do whatever work inside, design work inside that they have to do to make any types of changes before they actually start building on it. So again, I personally wouldn't think that you're going to start seeing any coaches from Pleasureway come out until probably 2020. That's just my feeling. Dean doesn't say that, but that's just my feeling. And finally, we had a question about if there's any idea how much the price increase will be for the 2019 models, and Dean is here to tell us it's approximately $4,000 to $5,000 MSRP. Now, one of the things I really like about Pleasureway is that Dean Rumpel, the CEO, he is a very nice guy and he's very helpful, and he has taken the time out to, you know, talk with me, answer my questions. I sent this list of questions off to him yesterday and he got right back to me. It was midnight. He got right back to me. He said he'd get to them in the morning, and sure as rain, he did. He sent me his answers this morning, and so I wanted to come out and film this episode as quickly as I could. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, I'd love if you became a subscriber. It helps me continue to make great videos. Leave a comment in the comment section below, and I try to answer each and every one of them. We'll see you again next time on Ultramobility, your channel for Class B camper vans. Take care. Bye-bye.